Hey guys, welcome to the Neglected Podcast. This podcast is not to change your mind, but to invite you into somebody else's narrative. This is a podcast to give a voice to the neglected. It is also an opportunity for all of us to engage.
Hello, Neglected Podcast listeners. This is your host, Jovanna Javis, and I am here with one of my good friends, Natalie Jones. I met her at a small group, and I feel like we hung out one time. We've been friends ever since. So I am excited for you guys to learn more about her and her story. As you guys know, with the Neglected Podcast, one of our big things is that people have stories and that stories matter. And so just very thankful that she came here today and is willing to share her story. So say hello, Miss Natalie.
Hello.
And so in as many words as you're comfortable, tell us about you.
About me. Well, I was born and raised in California. Good old California. And, big family, love the environment. When I was younger, got a little older and got a little too crowded for me. Love the outdoors. I hiked every trail out there in California. But yeah, I have one sister, mom and dad, lots of cousins, and that's me. I don't know. There's a lot more, but I don't know.
No, that's okay. And so what part of California are you from?
Southern.
Hot. Oh, okay.
Like an hour inland from Los Angeles, so it's more desert and hotter and drier.
Oh, that doesn't sound fun at all. No. And so you said that you have a big family, so you meant like extended family. Okay.
Where I live, our little neighborhood, my mom growing up would say, "That's your cousin."
Oh.
Who? I don't even know that person. They're just walking down the street. And they're not my, first. It was her first cousin, so technically my second cousin. But that's just how it was where I grew up. It was just, that's your cousin over there. Oh, that's your cousin over there. All right.
Yep. So everybody's your cousin. Okay. You have a huge family.
I was like, I've never even met them before. But first cousins, we were close. But second cousins, the cousins to my mom, I have no idea who these people are.
No, I feel like that happens with me too. My grandma, anytime we would go to a store, she'd be like, "That's your cousin," and I'm like, "How many people are in this family? Just how many people?"
Going.
Yeah. And then I found out later on that cousin doesn't always mean related. That just means they're friends and now they're cousins.
Oh.
So yeah, no. So,
it's cousin where my mom. She meant cousin.
It's a for real family.
For real, that's your blood.
So what's the ethnicity in your family?
Well, let's see. My mom is third generation, so my great-grandmother on my mom's side was born in Mexico. My dad was born in Guatemala. He came here to the United States. I think he said he was 24. Yeah, it was 23 or 24, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when he came to the United States. And then I believe he already had a brother here, and he started construction and then worked on getting his citizenship, and then met my mom, and they got married.
Okay.
Yeah. And
then they had you guys.
And then they had me and my sister.
Yeah.
So
what was that like growing up in, so it's multi-ethnic. So you had some Mexican heritage and some Guatemalan. What was that like for you?
Well, my dad's side, we would go visit them, and I didn't really like them too much. It sounds so bad, but they were just a little more rough around the edges, I guess you could say, know. And my dad is a very strict person. He's very strict and dedicated, and if he's committed to something, he's committed to something, and more of a obsessive kind of way sometimes. So you're well, so the whole family is kind of that way too, just really rough around the edges. Whereas my mom's side of the family, my grandmother was born in the United States, so the only person that wasn't was my great-grandmother. So we were all we didn't know Spanish. My cousins, we didn't know Spanish too well, but my mother and my Nina, everyone knew Spanish on that generation. My grandmother too, more like Spanglish, so it's like all slang stuff. So when I got into high school, this is the proper way to speak Spanish? Okay. But really different, honestly, both sides of the family. Whereas my Guatemalan side, very prideful, whereas like my mom's side, Mexican side, is very laid back. I mean, prideful too, but not. It's just different. It's really hard to explain.
Yeah.
So,
did you ever like feel like you should have known Spanish? Did anybody ever make you feel like you should know? You're not.
Oh yeah. My dad's side, not knowing Spanish, it was kind of, you were judged. Very harshly, like you should know it. And it was kind of like, I don't. Whereas my mom's side, all of us cousins, we didn't know it. We understood it, but we never could, like, we didn't speak it to each other because we were like, well, you don't need to. Whereas I would go over to my dad's side and they kind of were like, rolling their eyes at me, and because I didn't know it as well as they did. And goodness.
Yeah. Do you remember ever feeling anything about that? Like,
yes. In high school, I feel like it came out a little bit more because there was the high school that I went to for freshman year. There was a lot more native speaking, like kids that were born in Mexico and they came here. And so when they see me, they're like, oh, you just automatically, it's just assumed like that you speak Spanish. And I was like, no. So they made fun of me.
Oh, no.
And so it was kind of, I was taken back a lot of, well, I mean, I was born here. I understand you guys were born there, but I was born here. I don't have that pressure. My parents spoke it to me, but I wasn't forced to speak it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think as I'm older, I think maybe they should have, like kind of just like help me understand that I need to speak it. But I think maybe they didn't. I just didn't really commit to it.
Yeah.
As a kid, I was like,
no.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I'm very stubborn. I was a very stubborn little kid, so I can understand.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like you weren't Latina enough, or that your heritage needed to be more?
No.
Yeah.
Because my grandmother on my mom's side, very, how would you say, like, very strong and projected that, onto like all of us. There's only 3 granddaughters that she had, and I was the first one. And so she would always tell me, you be proud of who you are. You don't need to be any more or any less. Like, you are what you are. Like, we were born here in the United States. Your great grandmother was not, but you just remember where you came from. Remember. And just knowing my grandmother's story herself, like what she had to go through to raise her kids, as a single mom, and she did very well, and so she would always tell me, be proud of who you are, and you don't need to be any more. Like, when I would tell her, they're making fun of me, she's like, who cares what they think? She's very proud, very, very proud. Who cares what they think? You're who you are, like, remember that you are Mexican on your mom's side. I mean, you have Guatemalan too. She didn't have that. My grandmother's, full Mexican, so she would just tell me that, like, just be who you are. You don't need to impress them. And I was like, you're right. You're right. I'm gonna go back to school. I don't care.
Yeah. No, I think that's amazing that you had that moment with your grandmother, to have someone speak life into you and let you know that that's not the defining culture. Yeah. That's not the defining feature of your culture. Because I feel like I can just speak from experience as an African American woman. Like, there can feel like there are markers or there are things that, like, if you are African American, these are the things you should do or you have to do. And if you don't do them, then you're not enough. Like, you don't speak. So for you, I'm sure, like, you don't speak Spanish. Do you cook the food? Do you? And I don't know what else would be entailed. But you're not those things. Therefore, you are less. But I think that's amazing that you had someone in your life that was like, no, that's not even what it is.
Yeah, my mom too. She would, the only thing my mom would ever tell me that I guess would have like a hint of I guess pressure of your roots would be dancing, you know, if we're ever out dancing in a family, you know, get together, she goes, you're my daughter, so you should be able to, you know, you can dance. And I was like, yeah, you're right, I can, you know, like, I got rhythm. And she's like, you got rhythm? That was honestly the only thing that my mom was like, remember your roots, you know, you can dance. And I was like, I can dance. You're right, Mom.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can. My dad never said that. I don't, they had a different kind of dancing. I think I've only seen my dad dance once in my life. And it was very interesting because we made fun of him afterwards ever since, my sister and I, because he always had just the same little movements.
That's probably why he hasn't danced since.
Probably. Because we made fun of him.
Yeah.
Me and my sister were like, this is Dad. Here he is. This is how he does it every time. Good times.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it. And so for you, it sounds like you did have people in your life that were helping to shape you and how you viewed your identity. If we were to fast forward to just this current cultural moment of just different people saying different things, believing different things, how has that felt as a Latina woman to see and hear certain things or experience this?
Well, you know, my dad, born in Guatemala, he came here to the United States. And so anytime there's ever talk about, you know, immigration, it's a weird subject for me, just because my father was not born here in the United States, you know. However, when he did, you know, come to the United States, he worked really hard to become a citizen. He worked, he went to school to learn English, you know, and so growing up, he would root for the United States when they would play the World Cup, you know, and I always thought about that. And when I got older, I was like, Dad, how come you don't root for, you know, Guatemala? You were born there. And he goes, well, I'm a citizen here, and this is my country. You know? And I was, you know, so as I got older, there was a little different level of respect that I had for my dad, knowing that, you know, he made it a point to make this his home, you know, and he would tell us too, like, this is your home, you know, like, this is where you're from. You're from Riverside, California. Yeah. I mean, you would never say that, like, you're from Riverside, California, but, like, for the most part, like, this is where you're from. You're from the U.S., you know, but sometimes it does kind of bring up some, you know, so just some thought, you know, of what he had to go through to get here to the United States. And he wanted a better life for his, you know, family, future. He was thinking about the future, about his, you know, wife and kids. And so the story about him making it over here was intense, you know, and so he doesn't talk about it too much, but every once in a while I'll ask him, you know, what was it, what happened? And he would bring up a few stories that were just a little scary, you know, thinking, wow, like, you really worked at it to get over here, you know, and why? I would tell, you know, as I got older, I was like, why, you know? And he wanted a better life. And in Guatemala, he went to college out there. He got a degree in the university, but he was going to be an accountant over there. Yeah. But then he came here to the United States and he became a mechanic, a heavy machinery mechanic for the county. And it's just like a big switch. And I was, you know, Dad, why though? Yeah. If you had, you know, an education and you were kind of going through the motions out there. And he said, it's just, I wanted a better life. Yeah. And now I'm here, you know, those are my roots, you know, and that same thing with my great grandmother. They were escaping really violence, you know, and so they were coming here and they made this their home. Yeah. So.
No, I think that's a really powerful narrative to grow up with. And something for the Neglected podcast that we're really adamant about is we don't ever want to push a political or religious or whatever agenda. Like, the biggest thing for us is story. And this, everyone has a story. So no matter where you land with what you believe about immigration, what you believe about who should come in, who should not, I think it is important that we just pause our opinions and listen to story. Definitely. And just like what you were saying, just that narrative that you grew up with, having a dad that worked so hard and did a lot of things, and then even if you even think about it, like, could have been an accountant, came here and became a mechanic and worked really hard to become a citizen. That's a powerful narrative to have.
Mm-hmm. I mean, growing up, he pushed on us, he was very strict. He was a very strict dad. But I see why.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to make sure that my sister and I didn't, fall to the wayside or didn't make wrong choices and focused on school, and sports. He coached my soccer team for 5 years, so he was the coach. And, but very dedicated, and just
mm-hmm.
in what he wanted, and what he wanted was to, make a life for his family,
mm-hmm.
And, he worked hard. I think he's a workaholic.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to see it that way, but he is. He's
mm-hmm.
a workaholic. He has accrued so much time off that he can take 3 months off with pay.
Oh,
and
that's a lot.
I think it might be more, honestly. I don't
mm-hmm.
know. And I'm like, why don't you just take a week off, relax?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, okay. But just very, very dedicated,
mm-hmm.
and if that's his job right here and now, he's focused.
Yeah.
Which is something I admire, and I think I've got a piece of that,
mm-hmm.
so it's nice.
Yeah.
To just be able to, like, put your head down and say, I want to do this and I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my dad.
Yeah. So I don't know what you're exposed to on your social media or whatever, but as you see arguments and hard things, or however you label them, things said, what are the things you wish people knew about immigration just from your perspective?
Oh, man. That there are some who are they truly do want a better life.
Mm-hmm.
Truly. Now, do I think all of them? I don't, and that's the thing that we've had conversations with my parents, is my dad feels the same ways. He knows there are some, because that's what he was here for.
Yeah.
But he does have a little bit more of a judgment towards those who don't work hard to become a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Just because he knows, he's a rule. He follows the rules.
Yeah.
My dad's
mm-hmm.
not one of those people who's like, I'm gonna stand up to the man. He's
mm-hmm.
not like that at all. You
yeah.
know? So if there's a rule, he follows it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, in part, I feel that way too, where I'm like, yeah, it's true. But at the same time, I look at him and I say, Dad, but at one point you weren't.
Yeah.
And you came here. So
mm-hmm.
I feel very split most of the time when I see just arguments or strong opinions, and I don't really have that strong of opinion, just because I'm literally in the middle where
mm-hmm.
I see both.
Yeah.
And I'm a product of one, but was born here.
Yeah.
So it's, and my father pushed and made it a point to say, no, you were born here.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, where I'm from, and I remember too. But I'm a citizen here too, and we're Americans,
mm-hmm.
and so, and that's where it can get a little hazy too, because I know some people from, like, high school who don't think that way.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to not have a strong opinion and say, hey, but you are here,
mm-hmm.
in the United States. This is your home now, so embrace it.
Yeah.
Just because that's what I've seen
mm-hmm.
from my father. So it's hard to kind of have a strong opinion just because of the role model
mm-hmm.
that I've had.
Yeah. But I think the important thing that you just said is that you're in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're doing now, and what I would love to see more of in our culture, is just having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to have an opinion, you're going to have strong feelings, or maybe you don't, maybe you're like, meh. But whatever you feel, if you're not able to sit down and talk and have dialogue, like,
mm-hmm.
stories are important, because, like what you just outlined, what informs the way you feel about it goes back to the way you were raised
mm-hmm.
and to your father's influence.
Yep.
But if we were just to have a Twitter fight, which is not productive, that's my key. No. Don't ever do it. But if we were to have a Twitter fight, I don't know that that's what informs your decision,
mm-hmm.
And so then here I am judging you because mm-hmm. I haven't had a conversation with you. Does that make sense?
So true.
And so I think
So true.
that there's so much value in just what's your story, because we all have stories. And just like you said, I'm sure in high school, being around people who felt differently than you was kind of confusing, because it's like, why are you like this? My dad's not like this.
Yep.
This is not how I was raised to see
Yep.
things. But as we mature, we understand that there's narratives that we might understand.
Definitely.
So
Most definitely.
yes. No, but I appreciate you sharing that. I do want to fast forward a bit. So you are here in Savannah now.
Mhm.
How did you end up here?
Ah, yes. It was a whirlwind. So my now husband, we were dating at the time, and he was in the fire academy, and he was looking for a job, because in California, as a firefighter, it is very difficult to get a full-time fire job. It's weird, because it's always California's always on fire. So you think, why don't you want more firefighters?
Yeah.
You should have many, because there are many who always look to want to be a full-time firefighter. It's just very difficult to get into. So he was applying everywhere. Long story short, he ended up here in Savannah, and proposed, drove out here the next day. 3 months later, flew back to California. We got married. 2 days later, I was here in Savannah.
Okay.
And that literally was it. So within a 4-month period, I went from California single to Savannah and married, and I was woo. And that's how it is. That's literally the path.
Yeah. And your marriage is an interracial one. So how's that?
Yeah. It's funny because I never really thought of it that way. It was just, I fell in love with his heart, with his personality, his weird goofiness,
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I think it was our premarital counselor. He was just trying to point it out, say what if this arises, if there are some kind of tension with other people who, and I'm, what are you getting at here?
What are you talking about?
What are you getting at here? And he's like, no, just because you guys are of two different cultures, two different races. And I was like, that's very interesting. And I was like, I don't know, I love him.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. And he was like, I love her. We've never really, even if maybe people have looked at us differently, I don't notice.
Yeah.
It's honestly something that I just don't notice. But it was a problem with my father, which is interesting. Very interesting. And it's very complicated. Like I said, my dad is very complicated. And the fact that he didn't like that he was black. And so that was something that had to take some time because of just who he is. Yeah. A lot of prayer. And my mom she's a rock.
Yeah.
She's just a rock. And so it has taken some time, but I think honestly the most opposition I've gotten was from my own father.
That's hard.
So it was interesting because he almost didn't come to the wedding. It was pretty tense for a while there, but he did, and I'm glad he did. I'm glad he did, and I think now he realizes, just why, like he shouldn't have been so so hardened, but now he's a different person, and maybe it's just because we're 2,000 miles away. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe he's like, I miss you so much. But yeah, honestly, that's the only real opposition was my father.
Yeah. What was that like, overcoming that? I know you said that your mom was a big support and prayer was huge.
Definitely.
But were you surprised at all by that reaction?
I was.
Okay.
I was. My sister was. My brother-in-law was. We all were just taken back of what and where is this coming from, Like, what? And my father's always been a very difficult person, but my goodness, we were just kind of angry, at him, and in a more of just like disappointed too, just like Dad, what are you talking about here, And so, but it took some time, and I know, the Bible says to honor your mother and father, but then also there's God sees the heart, and so it's kind of like, okay, God, well, I want to honor my mother and my father here. you know, my dad is not, he's not on board. But is that right, though? The way he's feeling? Is it because he saw something in his character that he saw him, you know, do something that was wrong, you know, and he brought it to me and said, hey, you know what? I saw, you know, your boyfriend, he was, you know, blah, 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 blah. I don't think this is a, you know, a good choice because of his person, you know, or his character. But it wasn't. It was the way he looked. Yeah. Not the way he looked, but who he is. You know, and so not something that he can change. He can't just change his clothes or something like that. And I told my dad, you know, but what about people who look at me that way, you know, because I'm different. That I'm, you know, from two different, you know, Hispanic cultures, you know. What about that, you know? What if someone didn't want to marry me because I was a Latina, you know? Like, he just didn't understand that. Yeah. You know, and so that's when I knew it was like, this is not right. Yeah. This is not right. So I'm going to marry him.
No, but I think what you just said is super insightful. Because it sounds like you had like almost like a litmus test. Like yes, biblically I am to honor my mother and my father, but it doesn't appear that this is a situation in which it's like, hey, he has bad character, or hey, something is wrong. It was more like, he doesn't look the way I think your husband should look. And because it was that, then that informed your decision. Yep. Because I think that is unfortunately something that still happens among families, is having an issue with interracial relationships. But I think that's, especially like having a biblical model, I think that's a very powerful thing that you just laid out, is that you had that litmus test of like, well, this isn't a, hey, he's crazy, or this is more of a, hey, his skin wrong. So, and there's nothing that nobody can do about that. Yeah. So, yeah.
And my mom, it was interesting because my mom said, you know, I don't know about your grandma, because she grew up in a time in the 50s, you know, and even though she was, you know, she was second generation Mexican, there was still a prejudice where she was from. And so my mom said, I don't know about your grandma, you know, and I said, well, I love my grandma, you know, and I don't think she's gonna, because she loves me. Yeah. She loves me. My grandma loves me. And so bringing Tristan over, she just embraced it. And it was actually really funny because he was wearing ripped jeans. I don't know why he was wearing such like ripped jeans. It was his style. And I was like, oh my gosh. My grandmother, like 2 weeks later, bought me pants that had rips in them. And she goes, well, because I saw Tristan had them. And so I thought maybe it's a style and you can have them too. So that way you both can wear, you know, ripped jeans together. It was just really cute.
I just choked on my water.
We can edit that. You almost killed our producer.
I'm sorry. I was trying to be hot.
Oh.
It's weird that even if you choke on water, it's also the only thing that'll make you feel better.
The one thing that tried to kill you?
Yes. So you almost made him choke on water. So you were saying about the ripped jeans.
My grandma, yeah. So she bought me some ripped jeans so I could match him.
Oh, that's sweet.
It was really sweet. As a grandma, I mean, she always would buy me clothes, you know, so it was just interesting. She's like, you know, so you guys can match.
That's
I
precious.
told Tristan later, I was like, my grandma thinks that, like, this is the new style. And she needs to know not all guys wear that ripped jeans. I mean, his jeans were so ripped. It looked like they were falling apart. And I was like, please don't wear those again. But now that we have matching ripped jeans, we got to go to Grandma's house and show off her good work.
Oh, their love. Oh,
oh, Grandma.
No. Yeah. So that's real. Thank you for sharing that part too, because I think that's very powerful that you had so much support, even though you had that situation with your father.
Yeah.
How long have you two been married?
2 years.
Yay!
2 years last month.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And so your husband was doing firefighting here, but now he is currently working as a police officer. What has that transition been like?
Oh, well, I mean, he's still in danger. You know, when it was fire, it was like, okay, you know, every time he would text me, hey, I'm out or we got a fire call. It was immediate prayer time, and I knew I wouldn't hear from him for a little while. But I knew in my head, oh gosh, please don't be, you know, a structure fire. If it's a brush fire, it goes out quick. But please don't be a structure fire. Now that he's a police officer, he's driving around in a Target, you know, and it's not just, hey, I'm on a call, and I'm like, okay, I'm all right. Let me pray. It's all 12 hours that he's gone that I'm thinking, all right, Lord, please protect him, you know. And so I think the transition is more of like a constant danger. That sounds, you know, kind of interesting to say constant danger, but it's just the life of a police officer, you know. They're there when you need them, and they're also under constant pressure and stuff, so it's a different transition.
When you say Target, what do you mean?
I mean, there's a lot of people who want to hurt them, you know, and a lot of people who have a grudge against law enforcement, or have a certain perception of law enforcement officers. And so him driving around is a constant reminder of people that, hey, yeah, we are around for your safety, but also a constant reminder to those who break the law, you know, that it's a constant reminder that, hey, yeah, I want to get rid of you because I want to do what I want to do. Now, I mean, I can't say that's exactly what they think, because that's not fair, you know, but at the same time, that's just how I feel, you know, so I still feel kind of that he is still a target, you know. I mean, if I was not doing what I was supposed to do, I don't want my parents to find out, you know. And so kind of in that same way of, if you're doing something wrong, you don't want the police to find out, and if they do, now you're upset. And who are you upset at? Not the law, but you're upset at the person who came and got you and took you. So
would you say you feel that more strongly just with the way culture is with the police currently?
Definitely. Because when he was a firefighter, it was never ever like, oh, he's a firefighter. Never that way. It was just like, oh, wow, you know, like, he's a firefighter. Wow, you know, it was kind of like, yeah, you know. And but then police officer, you kind of get both. You get one who's like, oh my goodness, that's awesome. We thank him so much for and I'm like, yeah, you're right, I know. And then there's others who are like, oh, he's a police officer. Wow, that's kind of intense. And I think, well, yeah, but someone's got to do it. You know, someone's keeping us safe. So definitely, I think it is influenced from what I hear. But at the same time, it's kind of always guarding my heart and guarding his heart, because he sees a lot, you know. And especially if you jump on, you know, the news or social media, one bad story comes on, and it's an attack. Even though you don't feel it. It may not seem or said that way, but it's felt that way, you know? And so it's guarding my heart, but also guarding his, and saying, you know, reminding him that, hey, there are a lot of people who need help. And those are the ones that you're essentially protecting too, on top of the ones who don't like you. You protect both. And it's a hard job. But God's called you to do it. So
no, I think that's really huge as you talk about guarding your heart. And I would imagine it's hard not to take it personally. You know, like, I mean, there's this, you know, it's not everything's about you, but it can feel like everything's about you. It can feel like, even just in the anger that they're talking about you.
Oh, yeah.
Or that it's directed at you, even though, like, I think logically we know that who they're mad at, but it can feel like they're mad at like us as a unit.
The whole. Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think it's hard to hear that about, you know, it's a family, you know, they're brothers and sisters, you know, of uniform, you know, that you hear about it, you hear negative things, and you think, well, there's some good, though. There are a lot of good men and women out there who are working tirelessly to protect your entire city. And so to hear that and not feel almost hurt, like, hey, they're working really hard, you know, but any place is going to have the ones that are a little, even, you know, my husband will say, you know, there are some who are like, hey, you need to tone it down a little bit, you know, and so, but that's just because we're human, you know, and they constantly, all day, are dealing with people either saying that they didn't do something, or calling them and saying, no, I don't need you anymore, or saying, you know what, I don't like you, get out of my face. And so it's a constant day in and day out of negativity, whereas there is some positivity sprinkled in there, but it's mostly, you know, that negative. And so it's the constant, if you hear again something negative, it's okay, no, let's not dwell on that. Let's not dwell on it, because that's not the complete truth. That's just one incident, you know. So focus on still doing the right thing and still protecting and loving on people.
Yeah. No. I think that's the hard thing any way out, you know? Because I think we're just real angry right now. which I think, you know, just from what I've come up in with counseling, we have this concept of like an anger iceberg. So anger, underneath anger is typically all these other emotions. So there's like sadness, overwhelm, whatever. But anger is almost like a protective emotion. It's not a bad emotion. Like, I don't believe in any such thing as bad emotions. But I did have a counselor tell me once, he described anger as a big sister. And so when he would talk about anger, he was like, who is big sister protecting? What is big sister protecting? And so when we see all this anger, like, what is it protecting? And it's just like what you said, just as a police officer's wife, like, when you hear things, that anger floats up, and it's underneath that is just hurt. Yeah. You're hurt because you don't know my husband, you don't know my husband's story, you know? Because then he gets looped into the bad cop, because there's been a shooting or an assault or something that's happened. And then when you hear comments that say, all police officers are bad, that anger jumps in. And what is anger trying to protect? It's trying to protect your husband. And it's trying to protect your heart, because that's hurtful. But I love what you just cycled it back to, is no matter what, this is a calling. And so we need to love, and we need to care about these people, and we need to guard our hearts. And I think that that's super important, and something I would encourage you to continue doing. Because as of right now, because all the systems are flawed. And until we patch up the flaws, and until we, as a society from the bottom up, get better about, one, communication. I teach communication, and I'm like, everybody needs a quick little lesson in how to communicate. But communication, but then even just in our structures. But until then, keep guarding your heart and keep guarding your husband's heart. Because if anything, that's what the anger is. That's the feeling that you feel, that visceral, like, reaction, is that protection, because they don't know you, or they don't know Tristan's story. And that's really hurtful when people don't know your story and they're making assumptions about you. It just stinks.
It's so true. You know, I, as his wife, it's hard to hear, you know, and to know that, like, we serve alongside them. You know, it's the schedule that they have to do, you know, extra training, and, you know, being away, you know, switching from night shift to day shift, you know, and it's just a constant that we are serving alongside. You know, we're not out in front of it, but we're behind it. You know, we're behind the badge, you know, of the trying to keep it together, you know, trying to say, hey, but it affects us, you know. What hurts him hurts me, and what annoys him annoys me too. And especially when he comes home, kind of just lay everything out, which I want him to, you know. And so most of the time it's just me saying, yeah, that is, that's, you know, that's annoying, but hey, you know, remember, always be kind, you know, still be kind, you know. So every time he leaves, I say, you know, I love you, be safe, be kind. And he goes, okay.
That's really cute.
Okay.
It's sweet.
And he goes, okay, do I have to? And I was like, yes, you have to be kind. Don't have attitude, because you can have a little attitude sometimes. I'm like, hey.
That's really hard to imagine.
Yeah, I know, because he's so.
He's like so nice and like soft, so I can't imagine him being like, no, I'm sassy now.
Oh, he is. He could be sassy. He could be very sassy, or it's like, hey, remember, people are just. They make mistakes, and you unfortunately are there when they make it. You know.
Yeah.
So. Gotta just, you know, but it affects me too, so but I have to kind of like, you know, bring it back, say, okay, let's go back to the positive, you know. And so and there are times where he sees things that hurt his own, like his heart, you know. And so hearing it hurts me too, you know. And it's like, because I know sometimes he can't do anything about it because the law, or you know, can't or prevents him from going further and helping someone because of where he's at in his position, you know. He can't just say, hey, I'm gonna buy that for you but you just stole it. Okay, I know what you needed. I can't just, you know, he can't just do that, because it's his job, and he can't do that, but his heart is there where he wants to help. And so it's just a very interesting thing to hear sometimes, you know, to be on the other side, because before I don't have any law enforcement in my family, you know, so it was just, I knew the police were there for, you know, if you're in trouble, like if there's something wrong, you feel in danger, call them, you know, or they're there to protect you. You know, I grew up in a really rough neighborhood, but I was never involved with anything. And so other people in the neighborhood would see the police as, oh, you know, they're all just in it for themselves, and, you know, trying to just get whoever they want. And, you know, and never, ever, I mean, well, my parents would say, you know, that's not, you know, they're here to protect us, you know, and if you're doing something wrong, then they're going to take you to jail. And so, you know, that concept was very imprinted down, you know, when I was younger. But now being on the inside of it, it's different. You know, it's a lot different. It's a lot closer. And so it's a lot more personal.
No.
So, you know.
Yeah, no. And that's hard, because then, you know, I just said, don't take it personally.
You're like,
no.
What do I do?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't imagine what it must feel like for you as a wife. So what are some things that you wish people knew about being a police officer wife?
Oh, man. That there's a heart behind the badge. That he didn't make the law. He didn't write it. You know, he's enforcing it, you know. And that if I could be out there myself, you know, I would. I'm you know, I like to think of myself as a very daring person, you know, just because of who I am. But knowing that my husband's out there, I support him, you know, and saying that, I mean, I don't speak for all police wives, you know, but just knowing that we were on this position or this profession as well, you know, that we are there to support, you know, our officer, and just know that we struggle too, you know, and that he's human. He makes mistakes, you know, we all make mistakes, you know, but for the most part, like he's there to make sure that you're safe, you know, and he doesn't even know you. You know, sometimes it makes me feel a little jealous too, where it's like, you're going out there to, you know, protect other people. But I know for a fact that my husband, like, if this is what he does for strangers, you know, he will do anything to protect me, you know. So I kind of get a little like, hey, you're okay, I'm okay, you know. Don't get too worked up that I'm in danger, you know, because he will react quick. But to know that he's out there doing that for strangers is definitely a pride that I hold, you know, saying that, yeah, that's his heart.
Yeah.
Is to be out there and protect, and it's my job to protect his heart. So
what would you say the invisible need is for just the spouse of a police officer?
Support.
Like, what does the support look like?
Just saying, maybe just even just positivity, you know, just because we see a lot of negative. Just seeing more positive, saying that, yeah, or just respect towards them. Because if that's happening to them, it affects us in a good way. So if there's negative, it's affecting us negative. But if there's positive or mutual respect between, you know, police officer and, I mean, because it goes both ways, but, you know, just having respect towards them, knowing that they're putting that sacrifice in, you know, and so that's support. Honestly, it doesn't have to be a support group necessarily. Like, we need more support groups, although it would be very helpful, you know, have more, but at the same time, just seeing that there's more of that support towards them. Yeah. Because then that makes our job easier of being their spouse and supporting them. Yeah. So.
No, thank you for sharing that, because I think something that we've talked about before on this podcast is we can feel like when we see a need or when we see something that we have to do the big thing, but something that you're talking about is something very small, just being positive. And I'm sure when he's working or when he's working long days, just checking on you or saying something encouraging. And maybe that's a big step for somebody, but I think most people can muster a text. Most of us have thumbs, you know.
I know, you know.
Most of us do.
And most of us text.
No, but I think that's huge, because I think, you know, we don't really think about police officers as being neglected or police officers' wives as being neglected, but I can see how that can be a lonely thing. And I think that it's pretty obvious right now that people of color can feel neglected. But I think that on the other end, you know, it can be, and you have it all. You have you are a box of it all. But I can see how for you,
basket.
Just a little basket. No, not a box, but a basket.
Just a basket.
But I can see how for you it can feel like you can be overlooked, or that no one's seeing you in the midst of, because so much is going on culturally.
Oh yeah. You know, it's just nice to just have one little positive thing, you know, and say, hey, I see you. Yeah. I see you. You're not recognition. I don't want to be on like some kind of pedestal. Like, oh, I know I sacrifice so much. No, no, not at all, because there are many who are like me, who are police wives or, you know, police husbands, and we just want to see just some positive, you know, and because they do a lot of positive. Like the other day, Tristan was telling me the story of these little kids who, I forgot what had happened. Goodness, I forgot what happened. Like, I think because of the positive, kind of overlooked what negative happened. But he went and bought bubbles, and then took it over to them, and they were just.
That's very sweet. Yeah.
And so now he has bubbles in his police car. He bought like a bunch of them, so that way when he sees kids and they're having a hard time, he just gives them bubbles. I was like, that's awesome. You know, like, we need to hear more about that. You know, more about the positive things that they do, and especially with his department, you know, that they push the community aspect of community policing and being out there and being a person, not so much of just the officer who's just floating around and omnious, you know, just kind of there, but being a face and being a person, being there. But there's a lot of positive things that they do, you know, it's just not advertised.
Yeah. Well, that's not how things work right now either. Yeah. But I do think that we would be remiss to put that all on media. I think it's our responsibility to seek things out. And I don't think we do that as much. And I think it's our responsibility to hear another person's story. If you see somebody that's different than you, don't make assumptions on them based off what you saw in the media, in a movie, or in a book. Like, one should get to know them. One should ask questions. Probably not right out the gate because it's awkward.
Tell me everything.
But as you build relationships, you know, like,
Yeah. I
I think that is something that I'm really hoping this podcast, even if it only inspires people to have conversation, is that.
Definitely.
Is because we're going to get, because I will say I've seen on my social media really cute stories of police officer interactions, and I see really great things, but I've also fashioned my social media to do that because I want to be a joyful person, especially with my work. I need to be joyful. I have to be the optimist in the room sometimes. But I know for a fact that I also have a lot of negativity, but you have to seek that kind of stuff out. Like, if I am only forming my opinions based off what I see on Facebook or what's given to me, then yeah, I'm going to be angry all the time. And yeah, I'm going to feel the way I do. But I think that we have to be intentional about getting to know other people and about seeking things out, because things aren't always what they seem.
No, there's a lot under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more to the story
Yeah, always.
than what the book covers shows.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate you sharing so much today. I mean, we've talked through just your heritage, and we hit a little bit of everything. You shared just your experience as a police officer wife, and I really appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty. That means a lot, and I'm hopeful that people will gain something from listening to you and to your story and to the things that you shared today. And just, is there anything that you would encourage the listeners to do after our conversation?
I think it's just be understanding of everyone.
Yeah.
Just to be understanding is, I think, so important. You know, like, because you can, even if you have right away a judgment against someone because there's some other influence that you've seen before, felt before, done before, to still be understanding.
Yeah.
You know, and to still have respect for people too. You know, just whatever background, whatever profession, whatever, you know, just to be respectful, even if they may not be showing you respect. You know, maybe they're being judgmental or they're being harsh or what have you. Just to be understanding still. Mm-hmm. And to know that you can control that.
Yes.
You can control being understanding.
Mm-hmm.
You may not control them or anybody else and their understanding, and they could be just not understanding towards you at all, you know, but you can. Mm-hmm. And it will take you into areas that you didn't know existed because you were understanding, you know, and so just being open in that way, and then just just be in prayer and trust that you being understanding is gonna open up that door to someone's need or their hurt.
Yeah.
You know, you may not see it right away, but there's something that you could be even just praying for if you don't know it. If you just met them once, you could just be praying for that person.
Yeah.
You know, and knowing that, hey, I don't know everything, and I'm going to be understanding, even though they were, you know, harsh or they weren't showing me respect at all. But I can walk away and I can still pray for that person.
Yeah.
You know, and I can still be understanding.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think that was perfect. Well, thank you so much for today, Miss Natalie.
You're welcome.
And we'll talk to you later. And thank you for listening to the Neglected Podcast. We'll catch you next time.